What is up, YouTube? Welcome back to Truth Over Tea. Today, we have a real doozy for you. We're going to be responding to Drew from Genetically Modified Skeptic on his video. I guess the topic of the video is Satan becoming more popular than God. Here's why. And ultimately, he blames Christianity for the rise of Satanism. So it's kind of funny. Um, it's it's interesting to say the least. What are your thoughts on this video, Brandon?
I mean, that's funny. It's not intuitive. You wouldn't think Christianity caused the rise of Satanism, but he makes some interesting points. You know, I won't just dismiss all of them off the bat. We'll just have to get into it.
Can you hear me, by the way? Is my mic working?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think you sound good.
My wife had mentioned you couldn't hear me.
Oh.
Maybe I was just quiet or something like that. Well, hopefully that's not the case. Either way, there are definitely some interesting points he does bring up. Again, there's going to be a topic that gets challenged in the video, which is going to boil down to an issue of a lack of being able to articulate challenges to the belief. Intellectual challenges, and so that's when people can be led away from the faith. And so we'll see that as we dive into the video. But this will stress yet again the importance of being able to defend your faith properly, and to do so not just for your own sake, but for others' sake too. Because as we can see, unfortunately, Drew grew up a Christian. He fell away from the faith, and part of it's going to have to do with intellectual challenges that weren't addressed. It sounds like he was in a fundamentalist style church. A lot of times those churches don't accept a form of like criticism or questioning. Not all of them, but some of them are like that. So anyways, without getting too much into that is an issue. Is there anything that you wanted to address before we bring up the video?
Not really. I mean, he's going to talk more about his background in Christianity. You can comment then.
Okay, gotcha. So we're gonna try to play most of this video because it's not too long. It's an 18-minute video. We are gonna skip like the intro up to the minute 43-second mark, just because he kind of introduces the idea of all these Christians that are panicking over the growth in Satanism. And this video is only a year old. It's not, the events that it's going to cover is fairly recent. If you guys remember, there was a big spring or big enthusiastic showing of Satanism throughout Hollywood and the music industry, stuff like that, in 2023 and 2024. And he does kind of go over that. And it's interesting because that's kind of, I remember when that time was about. And I remember thinking, wow, that's wild, seeing just blatant Satanism in our face, and like award shows, and I can't remember if it was like Grammys or something like that, but that's where these things were happening, right?
Okay. Yeah, Sam Smith at the Grammys. Yeah. Yep.
That's right, the Grammys. Okay, Sam Smith. Yeah. So it's interesting. His take, I think there are some things he does get right, but a lot he gets wrong. But it's just interesting how big that movement grew, and that's continuing to grow today. I do think that they did receive some, like it wasn't the best move for them to make from a fame standpoint, a money standpoint. So some of them seem to have backed off from that. But it's crazy how full force they came in from the very beginning.
Yeah. I mean, I would say that movement isn't necessarily gone. I think it's continuing even now. There's a lot of people, a lot of pop stars who, seem to use that kind of art form. They seem to be interested in satanic images, and you got to wonder why that is. Now, I don't think he really addresses that. We'll get into it, but I don't think he really addresses why they do that. He might just imply it.
Yeah, no, definitely. Let's find out.
Warfare. I didn't just believe that satanic imagery in media indicated Satan's influence in our culture. I believe that basically anything that didn't praise or honor Christ was ultimately a result of demonic influence. Secular education didn't always agree with my view of the Bible, so Public schools bred demonic activity. Intoxication didn't honor God, so any place that served alcohol also served vulnerable souls up to Satan. But yeah, if I saw any of this back then, I would have been especially...
Okay, I wasn't supposed to go that far. My bad. So anyways, that's
well, we know where his religious background goes to. He may have been Southern Baptist. He may have been Independent Fundamental Baptist. They tend to be the teetotalers, the ones who are not drinking any alcohol. So that's interesting. Yeah. Though I would argue, a lot of people in the church do say this, that how sometimes if you're going to go buy wine, you go to the store that says like wine and spirits or liquor and spirits. There is like a biblical connection toward alcohol and being potentially possessed by other spirits. There is. It's not like anytime you drink, you are subject to being possessed by a spirit, because Jesus created, everybody says this, but he did create wine from water. And so it must be something good if Jesus made it, just don't have it in excess, which is repeated all over the Bible, but the idea that if you get totally drunk, that you open yourself up to spirits taking over. I mean, that's very biblical. And I actually have a lot of friends who have used like shrooms, for example, and then have said, yeah, you see entities when you take certain drugs. Now, he is probably going to say, well, it's just all a trip that's generated in your psyche. That, those images, they're not actually real. But then people will also tell you, like my friend would tell me, that the second time that he did shrooms, he ended up seeing these beings at a little distance, and they seemed nice at first, and he goes and starts talking to them, but the second time he used, they suddenly became very harsh with him, and he felt this impending doom sense, and never picked up shrooms again after that because he was so scared. There's like something deep within you that says, that's not just my mind, I'm gonna back away from this. So the psychoactive drugs and the connection with them and the spiritual world, that goes back to ancient times. Actually, one more thing, in ancient Greece, they would a lot of times get high. I'm not sure on which substance exactly, but in order to try to communicate with the gods, this is not a modern thing,
Yeah, no, definitely. And there is that notion to where it can seem, I don't want to say ridiculous, but a little over the top when everything that wouldn't be directed at Christ blatantly is of Satan. There are those people.
Right. You can go too far.
Right. You can have people that, that flower is red, it's of Satan, people like that. That there are, and that's why I said in the beginning, it seems like he had a very fundamentalist experience, because that's what you can get. I've had those fundamentalist Christians. I remember this one time there was a group of fundamentalist Christians doing street preaching. I won't call it apologetics, because it wasn't, on Main Street where I live, right? So we had this big parade, or they shut down Main Street during all of early fall, early spring, and all summer, and do these little events. Have a bunch of vendors out and music playing, all sorts of things going on, different restaurants giving out free food, things of that nature. And so there's a lot of people there, and so naturally that's going to encourage people like street preachers to come up and try to spread the gospel. These folks, however, were scary. Like, to me, they were kind of scary. So, wow, you guys are, if you're scaring me, imagine how you're scaring people who aren't very versed in scripture. Christians probably like it to a certain extent, ones that agree with the fundamentalist view. And then, of course, there's Christians that don't feel like that. And I'm hoping the fundamentalist view is not the majority of Christians, but most people were not approaching them. Like, they did not seem very approachable. They were yelling at people. There was these three people that came up to him. He started talking to him about Christ, of course, very loud, yelling very loudly. And they were very calm, quiet, subtle people. They weren't being aggressive with him at all. So I don't know why he was being so loud. And then these two hecklers came up and mentioned something about Satan. And this guy screamed at them, the street preacher. He screamed at them, I mean, really loud.
Wow.
You're of Satan. You're going to burn in hell. I don't think that's a very effective approach to bring people to Christ. I don't think that is.
No.
I think that is,
No.
if anybody within the Christian community can be a cause of pushing people towards Satanism, which is really modern day mocking God, or mocking Christianity, those people would be the ones. So I get it. There is that group of people that is just out there. And he even approached me as if I wasn't, give me your testimony. I can test your spirit from your testimony. And it's just, okay. All right.
Yeah.
I just
That's
wanted to have
extreme.
a quick conversation rather than you, drilling me to see if I'm actually saved or not. But it was strange. It was very weird. So I get it. There are those kind of people.
Yeah.
But anyways, I don't want to harp.
I've seen them myself. I just got to say, I've seen them big time in DC, and I've talked to them, and they're like, "Hey, brother, how you doing, man?" Because I had my own signs, to be frank with you. A lot of people will call me fundamentalist Christian, of course, but there's a difference in approach, and that approach puts people off the gospel, But oh man, I've seen them; they're intense, but they're. They might say in Acts chapter 4, Peter says to the Sanhedrin that you guys killed Christ. And so, or that what he says to, I think it's Simon Magus, who's attempting to buy the power of the Holy Spirit with money, which is considered very blasphemous. He says, I mean, hell is waiting for you, Simon. You're about to go to hell. And I'll give them, there's like an instance where that happens in the Bible. There's a couple of them. But for you to just, you know what, I'm going to get up here and I'm just going to say all gays go to hell. First of all, that's not true necessarily, right? If it's all sinners go to hell, buddy, you would be going to hell too. No, we're saved by the blood of Christ, But like, that's also not a way to catch people. There's something to be said of you catch flies with honey, not with water. I mean, not with vinegar.
Yeah. No, like I said, there are those kinds of people. And so I understand. But anyways, we'll get to the next part. So like I had said, the imagery piece is coming up. And so let's see what Drew has to say about that.
If I saw any of this back then, I would have been especially convinced that Satan was controlling the minds of influential people in our culture in an attempt to destroy God's kingdom on earth. But they're just making a statement. It's
Oh, no, let him say this.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Art. Sorry. They don't really believe in Satan, people would tell me. I'd respond, do you really think that an evil entity that wants to destroy you wants you to think he exists? If you don't think he exists, you'll never recognize his influence. Satanic or demonic forces almost always influence people without their knowledge. But Christians who have the discernment of the Holy Spirit, like me, can see when that's happening.
Okay, I really like what he's getting into. We can talk about that. But with Lil Nas X, oh my gosh, with some of the things he did, and it wasn't just one. And then he goes and makes a shoe line, or not a line, maybe. Well, yeah, I guess with
a
Nike.
Shoe model.
I don't know if he partnered with
a shoe
Nike
model.
on this. Okay, but the shoes had like a drop of human blood in the sole. Things like that. That's really weird, and you could say they're just trying to get attention, but whoa, bro, that's really intense. How about in order to get attention, go draw pictures of Muhammad, why don't you insult other belief systems? And now Muhammad, Islam still, they talk about Satan too, but there are ways to tailor it to Islam. Why don't you do that? Or why don't you, insult Hinduism or something like that? Obviously, he's trying to be edgy in a Christian context, but that's also weird. Like, even from a secular perspective, are we just going to shrug that off and just think, oh, that guy has no spiritual beliefs whatsoever? He just wanted to put blood in shoes just because he thought it was kind of cool. Could it be possible there's more there? I think even Satanists should see, atheists should see that and scratch their head and go, okay, that dude's weird. He might be a Satanist. He might be,
Well, remember, the modern Satanist typically is an atheist who just mocks Christianity. And so that's the problem is they think like if you're truly going to look at what Christianity is and do an internal critique, you have to keep in mind that means Satan is real, and you have to think like Satan is real.
Yeah.
So that's he's going to bring up something else. So I don't want to go too far into this. I want to wait until he mentions this next part. But at the end of the day, the only reason somebody would do that is because it represents Satan, and because that's a mockery to Christianity. Why would you want to mock Christianity if it's not true? What if it's just someone's belief? What if it's a belief that's put somebody in a better point in their life as opposed to a lower point in their life, and that's truly better for them, even if it's false? Would you want to move them away from that or mock them from that? Right? You like you had said, you're not going to see this of them doing making fun of Muhammad in any way. You're not going to see them making fun of anybody from Hinduism, Buddhism, or any other Eastern religion. It's only going to be Christianity, and you won't even see it of Judaism. Like they'll be very careful. If people like Drew and other atheists online are very specific to say Christians, Christian apologists. They'll never say Jews. Never.
Yeah.
It's very weird. We literally, most of the Bible is the Old Testament, and we read that same Old Testament, and we believe that with Christ comes the New Testament. So it's just weird. It's kind of weird.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Yeah, that is. It's like you're not allowed to make fun of Jews. Interesting.
Right. So anyways, let's see what else he has to say.
I eventually stopped believing in the supernatural in my adulthood. Loved ones immediately told me I was succumbing to satanic influence and made the point that I just articulated. I had thought about this idea a lot by then, so I responded, by that exact same reasoning, couldn't I, or a Muslim rather, say that you are being influenced by Satan? After all, in Islam, the shaitan doesn't want you to think he exists. He almost always influences people without their knowledge. He doesn't want you to practice the true faith of Islam, so he subtly manipulates you to believe that Christianity is true. But you can't recognize that because you're not a faithful Muslim. But that's not...
So, and that's the clip I wanted to show. The problem is, yes, you could kind of flip that both ways, right? As a skeptic, to somebody who hasn't really thought about this issue. But we don't think that Satan is real as a way to keep us, like there probably are Christians that use that Satan is like a catalyst to keep them towards Christianity as opposed to their love for God. Sadly, that's probably true. But when we think about it critically and we analyze, okay, is Christianity true rather than is Satan going to get me? You know, that's a different story. Like if somebody says to you, well, you're only thinking this because Satan is tricking you. That's probably not the best way to evangelize someone who's deconstructing or has lost their faith. That's probably not the best way to do it. But secondly, if that's a way you must go for whatever reason, and then he presents this question back to you, say, well, if Christianity is true, then no, then Satan would want you to do this. That's exactly what Satan would want you to do. It's not whether, oh, well, if Muslims think, then it's the other way around. So why not just not believe either? That's not a good way to process this. That's not a good argument. It doesn't logically follow. And just because Islam, even if, like, let's just say Christianity is false, right? That doesn't mean Islam's false and vice versa. So this just doesn't seem like a very good way to derive truth.
Yeah, this isn't an eternal critique anymore. He's left that, it's like, oh, okay, well, let's consider Islam's truth claims now. And then, we'll walk down that path and determine if we think Satan is really trying to deceive us into rejecting Islam. And then one thing you could do, I think, with him is you could say, well, hold up, you don't believe Islam. Okay, no, okay. I don't believe Islam. Okay, so we don't think Satan's doing it. Okay, what's the only thing on the table then? Is he really convincing you? That's the only thing that's on the table, because if your worldview is true, then Satan doesn't exist. If my worldview is true, then he does exist and he could be convincing you of something,
Yeah.
And he's probably not trying to convince you to follow the religion of self-sacrifice. I wouldn't bet on it. I would think that Satan, if he's going to try to get you to do something, it would be one that maybe harms people, especially if Satan is some kind of being of absolute evil, or with as much evil as possible. He would want to try to get you to do something that is definitely evil. And I don't think self-sacrifice, such as, shown at the cross in Christianity, is one of those things. I don't know. Just with that, it seems to me that Christianity is clearly in the other direction. And it does make sense to me that Satan would want to make it so people don't know about him. I think that's true. C.S. Lewis talks about that in the Screw Tape Letters.
Right.
That's in several movies and shows, but
the smartest thing Satan ever did was convince people he's not real.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the old
Kaiser
adage.
Soze says that, and The Usual Suspect, I think, is the movie. Yeah. But
And real quick before you go, Epic Farming and Podcast says, sorry, but if Christianity is false, then Islam is false because Islam confirms the Bible. I don't know if Islam confirms the Bible, but I think I understand what you're saying, that Islam relies on the Bible and plays afterward. But remember, the Dawas are going to argue that the Bible's corrupt. And that's why we don't see like the Injil and stuff like that doesn't match up with scripture. And we don't see these prophecies of Muhammad. They are there, but we have a corrupt Bible. So no, if Christianity is false to the Muslim, they're not going to say, well, Islam is false. They're going to say, aha, the Bible's corrupt. So that's how that's going to play out. But I do get what you're saying there, Epic Farming. I get it. Anyways, I just wanted to address that. And another thing too, I had to say, it's funny that he's playing the position he's playing right now. Drew, he's playing in this, little head game, this brain teaser. He's playing devil's advocate. So I just thought that was kind of ironic.
Wow. I didn't even think of that. That's good. Wow.
Yeah.
No. It's just, I think it's very reasonable that Satan would not want people, especially in this post-Enlightenment culture, to believe that he existed. The quieter that demons are in the West, the more likely people are to have an atheistic worldview or some kind of one that lacks any luster, and it's funny because if you go in Africa or you go in South America, like they know that the spiritual world exists. There's no debating on it. Like they know it. And so it's almost as if demons are just, okay, fine. I'll just reveal myself. That's fine. He already knows. Now the best thing to do is just to scare him. But in the West, it's no, don't play low profile so that they don't even think you exist. And that impacts their faith. Because what's going to happen the second a demon actually reveals himself to you? You're probably going to go pray. What do you think is going to happen? Right. Yeah. And you'll be influenced immediately on the existence of the metaphysical right there. So yeah, they don't gain that much from revealing themselves. Though I do think, this is another discussion another day. I do think they do. They still do it in dreams and things, and we'll get down that road another day.
Yeah. We'll cover that another day.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So we'll let's see. The next part, he really just kind of goes over, like his family asked him, really, you don't think Satan's involved? And he said, no. Are you really going to say that Satan's involved with this? And they ended up saying no. But I think it was kind of, what's your family going to say? Like at the end of the day, your family wants you to be around, right? And they're probably not going to push you away.
Yeah.
Right. They probably don't want to push you away. So if that's what you believe, they'll let you believe that and hopefully try to come evangelize to you in another manner. I don't know the dynamics of his family, so I can't speak on their behalf. But I know if I were in that situation, I probably wouldn't continue to push and say, no, Satan is the reason you're doing this. Satan is the reason you're doing this. Because somebody like him, he might find that to be like an intellectual assault. I couldn't possibly think this on my own. It's because some supernatural force is pushing me away. And so I just have no control over this, which will take us down another path. But that could seem insulting to somebody. So I understand. So anyways, the next part that I wanted to bring up is when he's going to start getting into what he thinks the reason is.
I obviously don't think that the latest wave of Satan-themed pop culture is the work of an actual devil. I do, however, think that it reveals what many people, especially those under 40 or so, are experiencing spiritually. Now, I see the spiritual naturalistically as a part of psychology, but I'm hoping to provide helpful insight to anyone watching, religious, spiritual, or not. So, to those willing to take that journey with me, let's explore why Satan is growing in popularity and what that says about the spiritual lives of those so interested in him.
Okay, so before he gets into this first part, the dichotomy of values, I've heard many people say this. This is kind of the common go-to argument for naturalists: is that obviously there's nothing supernatural, so this is a psychological phenomena. That's all it is.
Yeah.
You know, the distinction between ontic and phenomena. Ontic, obviously, if something is real, and then phenomena is when it appears real, but it's not. So,
What did you say? Ontic?
yeah. Ontic
Okay.
is like something that's real, as opposed to phenomena, which is something that appears to be real. So, and that's why he appealed to psychology here, and this being some form of phenomena, because there is a genuine feeling of truth, a genuine feeling of being real when people have this experience. Most people don't come out and say they've had an experience with Satan or a demon or something of the sort, and it's like a joke. Like most of the time, it's a legitimate thing, and they're scared. Like you said earlier, if they see a demon, they'll probably go pray, even if they weren't believers beforehand, because they're scared. What is this? This is beyond me. Um, but I think the problem with the psychological piece, and it's funny because we've talked about this before, but Drew in particular has had a Satanist expert on his channel. I can't remember this guy's name. I'll have to pull it up here later. But he is a naturalist too, and he thinks that this is all psychological phenomena, and people experience this. Some people feel this way. They feel they've encountered Satan or demons because of things they've seen in movies, and then they psychologically react in the way that they think they would in the movie, and they just kind of live this out in real life. But it's all psychological. It's not an actual demon, or it's not Satan. So
Yeah.
this is the naturalist way to explain this. And I remember Cameron from Capturing Christianity did a response video to that guy, and he had an exorcist on, and he said, okay, let's say that's true. Let's say those specific experiences, demonic possessions, things like that, because this guy was a specialist in Satanism, and also demonic possession, which is going to be involved in that. What do you do with the people that are levitating? Or the people that are speaking different languages, Latin, not just different languages, but ancient languages, the people that spin their head all the way around, the people that can crawl up walls, are these exorcists lying? That's really all you can say, is they're lying, or they're crazy. They're they're hallucinating, or the holy water tests. These supposed possessed people just somehow always get it right. It's just a coincidence. So I think there's a lot to be desired. Like, the naturalist explanations just don't fit. They're very weak compared to the supernatural explanation, or to the actual demonic or Satan. That just seems a lot better of an explanation than these strange, cram a square peg into a round hole explanations from a naturalistic point of view.
Yeah. I wonder how they arrive at that conclusion with the movie thing. Like, you're just acting out a movie, and that's what that person is trying to do. It's like, oh wow, why would that be? That seems kind of quite hypothetical. How would they have evidence to support that? I'm not sure. That's weird.
I don't know. To me, it seems it's possible. I'm sure that might happen, but to just throw a generalization sticker on all those types of experiences and say this is the explanation, or it's always going to be some sort of psychological thing, to me, that just is irritating to me. This has happened all throughout history, even before movies. I don't know what you now explain before movies. 200, 300 years ago, there were no movies. So what about then? Was it stories? Oh, it was stories that they read. Okay. And so, again, naturalism comes to save the day. And I also encourage all of you that are watching, to check out this. There's a playlist that Genetically Modified Skeptic has here. I'm going to share my screen real quick. My other screen, rather. And he has a whole playlist with this guy, Dr. Joseph Laycock. That's his name. And this is I guess this is his expertise. So he goes over. He has several different videos with him. There's one right here, which is the Satanism expert explains modern Satanism in 6 terms. And then he has a couple other videos. The one where he reacts to the anti-LGBT satanic panic, that one's not as informative with this specific topic. But there's another one here too, I think. Where he goes over actually getting possessed. Watch that series. And this is the naturalist explanation. That's how they try to explain what's happening from a psychological perspective as opposed to a supernatural perspective. And then see what you think. Watch that, and then watch exorcists share their stories. Compare it for yourself.
Yeah.
Anyways.
It should reveal something.
Yeah, I think it does. But here, we'll keep going.
Christ and Satan, a dichotomy of values. In Christian theology, Lucifer, like mankind, is God's creation. He traditionally carries out evil, but because God is perfectly good, many theologians maintain, it follows that God did not create Lucifer's evil nature. Rather, Lucifer's nature became corrupt after his creation, taking on characteristics which God lacked. In this way, Satan is simultaneously an inversion of God's nature and dependent on God's nature for his own. What Satan as a character does, or as a symbol represents, depends fully on what God does and represents.
Yes, thank you. I mean, a lot of that I think was pretty good, but Satan, evil, is just a privation of good, as C.S. Lewis would say. Privation, the word deprivation has the same etymology there, so it's just like a shadow is to light is what evil is to good. It's not really a thing in itself. So Satan didn't actually create anything that God lacked, so to speak. It's just Satan did not measure up to God's standard. And so if you take any of God's laws and you just twist them, you basically create a shadow. And that's where evil comes from. I mean, is it evil all the time biblically let's see. Well, let's say even to like kill someone else. Is that always evil? No, because like there could be self-defense, there could be like in certain war scenarios, there's like just war, okay. But yeah, if you go murder someone, okay, then you've sinned, just like if you have sex outside of a godly marital covenant, right? Then it's evil. But the act itself is not evil. It's just used in the wrong way. It's just when you twist it. So yeah, I mean, I guess I would add that to what he's saying just to make it clear. Evil's not a thing in itself. It's not like Satan added to himself something that God did not have.
Right. No, I think he gave a decent, explanation there of the understanding of Satan. It's like the old, I guess the better analogies, if it's still difficult to grasp, you can't have rust without metal, right? You can't have shadows without sunshine. So, and then you can't have, you'll have cold is a lack of heat. So
yes,
the deprivation of heat, heat is energy, cold is not. So, in regards to Satan, the deprivation of good, a lack of good is the evil. So I thought he represented that well.
Yeah.
We'll keep going.
Presents. Arguably the most enduring conception of Jesus is that of God himself in human form, a divine savior, Christ. Through his words and deeds, he perfectly embodied the things we should all cultivate within ourselves: peace, wisdom, charity, incorruption, justice, mercy, and unconditional love of others. In turn, the most enduring conception of Satan is that of the antithesis of all these things. In his rebellion against Christ, he has represented violence, ignorance, deception, greed, corruption, injustice, cruelty, and hatred of others.
Yeah. And so this next image is the next guy. But anyways, yeah. No, I think that was a pretty good summary. Again, accurately depicting Christ came down to earth. That was the perfect human form of good. Satan would be the opposite of that, lacking those characteristics.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anything you want to say before we get into the next part?
No, I mean, that's good. His Satanology is on point right now. That's fine.
Definitely. Now, this next part that we're going to get into is when he introduces Percy Shelley and the new view of Satan that came about during the Enlightenment. So interesting, like with the coming of science, the move from natural philosophy to science into where we have today, eventually leading into things like Darwinism and that Marxism. It's interesting the connections that are drawn and the changes on the view of Satan. But let's see what Drew says.
Cruelty, and hatred of others. Early in the 19th century, a new conception of Satan emerged from Romantic literature, that of an underdog, heroic in his rebellion against authority undeserving of obedience. Taking this interpretation of Satan in John Milton's Paradise Lost, Romantic poet Percy Shelley wrote, "He is a devil very different from the popular personification of evil, and it is a mistake to suppose that he was intended for an idealism of evil. Malignity, implacable hate, cunning, and refinement of device to inflict the utmost anguish on an enemy, these, which are venial in a slave, are not to be forgiven in a tyrant. These, which are redeemed by much that ennobles in one subdued, are marked by all that dishonors his conquest in the victor." The devil owes everything to Milton. Dante and Tasso present us with a very gross idea of him. Milton divested him of a sting, hoof, and horns, and clothed him with a sublime grandeur and a graceful but tremendous spirit.
Interesting. So it seems that now Percy Shelley, he died very young, 29.
Whoa.
I think he died in a boating accident. Some people say that he was killed, but I haven't seen strong enough evidence to take that position. That's just a claim that's been thrown out there. It's also said that he was a violent man filled with rage, and he would go berserk in an instant. He was a very angry person. Some of it apparently was due to being bullied in school. And actually, from like what the historians write about him, Wikipedia actually does a decent job. I don't like Wikipedia a lot of the time, but I don't see much difference between the two. So if you read up a little bit on Percy Shelley, husband of Mary Shelley, I think she was the author of Frankenstein. It's kind of funny. They have interesting things they write about there. But anyways,
great book.
Yeah. But either way, so he was a bit of a lunatic in a certain sense, getting angry, lashing out. That's what he was known for. So if you're known for that, that's, I guess it's not that surprising that he would feel this way about Satan. He probably felt this way about himself to a certain extent and may be related to Satan. Unfortunately, this is how he felt about the very force of evil itself. But either way, what are your thoughts?
Dang. I didn't know that much about him. I actually learned things from Drew's video here when it comes to this era in history. I didn't know that there was this romanticization of Satan that occurred. And looking into it, there was. And I'd like to add some more data on that, but I want to, of a certain character, and bring some light on that from the mid 1800s. But I'd like to do that a little bit later. I want to have him make his case a little bit more and then bring this person up.
Okay.
But
and just for those of you watching, and the person we'll be talking about later, remember this person was an influence to that person. I know we're just leaving everyone in suspense here, but
I didn't know that either. Wow. Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Note that Shelley takes Satan's role as God's intended slave as necessary to justify his hatred and rebellion. In his recent commentary on satanic imagery in pop culture, Ben Shapiro identified the romantic view of Satan as driving Satan's increasing popularity today. He did this, though, by explaining a traditional view of Satan's character in Paradise Lost and conflating this with the romantic view of Satan.
Satan in Paradise Lost very famously says, "In my choice to reign is worth ambition, though in hell. Better to reign in hell than serve in heaven." It's the big kind of tagline for Satan in Paradise Lost, is better to reign in hell than serve in heaven. And the whole reason that Satan rebels against God is not because he actually thinks that God is morally wrong. It's because he believes that individual autonomy, that his sense of power is more important than anything. He rebels against God specifically because God demands good things of him, not because he thinks that God is demanding bad things of him, but because he recognizes that God stands for a higher morality, something good and true. He rebels against it specifically for that reason. But that rebellion, for large parts of the transgressive mind over the course of the last several centuries, that rebellion is heroic in this view. And that has now become the full-fledged view of so many on the left. And they don't even know that this is the case.
So, is a rebellion against all goodness for the sake of mindless self-indulgence all that's behind Satan's popularity?
So Shapiro said that's actually behind a lot of the mindset of the left.
Yeah.
That, this idea that almost like a rebellion against God because of a desire to preserve freedom, almost, autonomy, and while God, he might be good, but he's encroaching on
pleasure. I don't know about freedom pleasure.
For pleasure. Yeah. So he says that. That's really interesting. That also plays into the character or the people that I'm going to bring up in a moment. Yeah.
Okay. You want me to keep going?
Yes.
Okay.
I'll flatly say no. That is an overly simplistic narrative created to serve the biases of traditionalists. What about a rise in the actual romantic view of Satan as a champion of individual sovereignty in the face of tyranny? While I do think the romantic view is very influential today, I don't think it's the whole story. Recent events and individual experiences are creating a new meaning to Satan's character. Inverting Christ from charity.
So before he does this, I guess he already offered it up there and saying maybe it's the championing of what do you say, individual sovereignty in the face of
tyranny. Yeah.
Tyranny, maybe that's what Satan is doing. This new idea that people have gotten that, this is fighting tyranny. That's really interesting. Because I don't know if anybody has heard of Saul Alinsky, who was a famous communist from, several decades ago, actually, mid 20th century, who wrote an interesting book called The Rules for Radicals. Let me try to share my screen quick and just show something that he included in the dedication to Rules for Radicals. Here. Bear with me. Don't show this again. Okay. And give me a minute, please. Oh, no. Wait, it's not there. Where did I put that? Oh, yes.
Okay.
Share. Boom. Do it. Okay. Here you go. Yes. Here we go. So, interesting thing that he says here right at the beginning of his book. You wouldn't expect this from a guy who's trying to, come off credible, have a good audience. But he says, in his dedication, lest we forget at least an over-the-shoulder acknowledgement to the very first radical from all our legends, mythology, and history, and who is to know where mythology leaves off and where history begins, or which is which, the first radical known to man who rebelled against the establishment and did it so effectively that he at least won his own kingdom, Lucifer. Okay. Now, like I said, Saul Alinsky was is a well-known community organizer, and
communist.
Oh yeah, that's a term for someone who organizes communities literally in the direction of communism, trying to get them to subvert the control of the current government regime and replace it with a communist one, right? And there are different types of communists. You have Marxist Leninists who are trying to make a bloody revolution, and then you have Fabian communists who are more patient and are willing to just slowly subvert the educational system, turn people around, brainwash people, and then institute communist truth instead, where they've removed traditional truth, then you have that. And he may have been more one of this type. That's kind of what a lot of the community organizers nowadays, or at least in America, that's what they're trying to do. And so he ties his movement to Satan, because Satan was so good at rebelling. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to rebel. So I find that to be interesting. But then you got to think, who even started all of that? Who even brought up communism to begin with? And well, he didn't bring it up to begin with, but then you have Karl Marx, right? And so this is another interesting thing to share. Yes, there it is. Thank you for doing that. Okay.
Yeah.
So,
Make it full screen too.
Yeah, I found this video that Jordan Peterson had where he's talking to Dr. Paul Kengor, who wrote a book on Karl Marx. And what he's about to do right here is quote what Karl Marx's dad wrote in a letter to him. So this is very interesting right here.
Mm-hmm.
The monster of 10,000 devils, he describes him. And the letter from his father is which was written in 1837, a year before his father died. So his father writes to him, March 2nd, 1837. Karl, at times my heart delights in thinking of you and your fortune, and yet at times I cannot rid myself of ideas which arouse in me sad forebodings and fear when I am struck as if by lightning by the thought, is your heart in accord with your head, your talents? Has it room for the earthly but gentler sentiments which in this vale of sorrow, it's a beautiful letter in many ways, are essentially consoling for a man of feeling? And then this question from the father of Karl Marx to his at this point, 18-year-old son. And since that heart, Karl, is obviously animated and governed by a demon, not granted to all men, is that demon heavenly or Faustian? Will you ever, and that is not the least painful doubt of my heart, will you ever be capable of truly human domestic happiness? And this doubt has no less tortured me since I have come to love a certain person like my own child. Will you ever be capable of imparting happiness to those immediately around you? By the way, the answer was no.
So that's pretty crazy to have your father write something like that about you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it seems, and they go on to say a lot more. The longer conversation is also available on YouTube. But Paul, Dr. Kengor, he talks about Marx was obsessed with plays when he was younger. He was into plays before he got into economy. And he said, or economics, he said that his favorite character was Mephistopheles, who is the satanic character in the play Faust. And he likes a lot of quotes from him and things. And he wrote poems to his girlfriend, and all of these things are very satanic sounding. Now Marx was a self-admitted atheist, but when you bring up all of these things, it's gonna be weird. That's strange. If I heard that, I would be kind of freaked out if I heard these kind of poems. Okay, but then on top of that, you're thinking, okay, so we have all these claims and stuff. Do we have anything from his life? Well, according to James Simpson's book, who was Karl Marx, we do have some things from Marx's life. In fact, we have a lot of writings from people who knew him. Apparently, he had a lot of greed, and he was definitely obsessed with pushing things like his work, the Communist Manifesto. And he wasn't so concerned about the welfare of the people around him, just like his father was concerned about. So Simpson says here, page 10, toward the bottom, that Marx's personal life may jam open a window into his tormented soul. 2 of his daughters and son-in-law committed suicide, and a son-in-law committed suicide. 3 children died of malnutrition. He had an illegitimate child by his maid, but said that Engels, a bachelor, was the father.
Yeah.
And Friedrich Engels was his cohort in writing his content on communism.
And financier.
Yeah, and financier. Yes,
Mhm.
yes. Engels was independently wealthy and then was able to pay for Marx's habits, even though Marx himself never had a job where I believe he never had a job where he earned his own money, but I'm not entirely sure about that. I know for a long time he relied on Engels.
Yeah.
Okay. So Engels agreed to raise this child as his own, but kept the truth a secret until revealing it on his own deathbed. Marx's wife left him twice, but came back both times. Not that he cared. When she died, he didn't bother to attend her funeral. So this is a guy who does not care about his family, to the point where he would allow his children to die of malnutrition, at least some of them. I mean, this is definitely a guy with a bad personality.
Yeah.
And
By
so
the
what's
way,
the point of all of this?
he did have one job. He took
Okay.
a job as a journalist and later became the editor of the Rheinisch Züdnig, which I probably totally got wrong.
Good attempt. Wow.
Yeah. I am German blood descent, but I can't speak German at all. A liberal newspaper in Cologne. So he did have a job. He had one job.
Yeah. Yeah.
At one point in his life. But no, what you were saying, other than that, he was very much reliant upon either Engels as his financier or his family for money.
Yes.
We have letters, as Dr. Paul Kingor goes over in that interview, asking for money from his family over and over again. He didn't even attend his father's funeral. Like this dude was an angry person. There's like this series of time where he was super angry at the world because of himself being covered in boils, and he refused to shower or bathe for a long time.
Wow.
So long, that's why he got these boils. And this was similar to, I think, King Louis, I think, did the same thing.
Huh.
It was one of the English kings that did the same thing. I think it was King Louis.
I mean, French kings.
French king. I'm sorry. It was either an English or French king that did the same thing.
Wow.
But yes.
No, but the point is that so people claimed maybe he was possessed by a demon. They're not so sure about it. And then, of course, what we get from him is the ideology, the economic system that then becomes a governing ideology that caused the most death in the 20th century out of anything, more than all the people who died in World War II actually died from communism. And Lenin also, and Kangor talks about this, but there are other people too. Lenin, who was the person who headed up the communist revolution October 1917 in Russia, was a huge atheist who did what he could to destroy the church. And just this connection with communism and Satan, communism's origins in Marx with Satan. And then you also see it in Saul Alinsky in the dedication of his book. I just think that's strange. And we see it also, and you said Percy Shelley, right?
Mm-hmm.
You were saying he actually influenced Karl Marx and everything that he did. So that's weird. Actually,
it's just
and I'm jumping a little bit ahead of Drew, but I would think that a lot of the association, a lot of the interest in Satanism nowadays would maybe be because of the popularity of communism, which is more popular today in America than it has ever been. We really are at a different place than we were a few generations ago. Well, a few decades ago.
Yeah. Well, this is ultimately Marxism it's the ideology that leads to communism. Communism is the economic system from Marxism. And so this is very attractive, especially to, I mean, I think even older generations, but the millennials, they completely fell for it. Even Gen X, Gen Z has fallen for it. The alpha generation, they're pretty young still, so maybe they can see through it. And they're going to probably see the brunt of it as it's becoming more and more. It's going to permeate more and more of our government, our society, as it has. So that is a huge explanation. It's funny because Drew is obviously a liberal. He's obviously on the left from a political standpoint, just from little sly things he'll say about Trump and other things that he'll stab at conservatives. routinely pointing at like Ben Shapiro, right?
Mhm.
He's on the left, but he doesn't point this out. He doesn't point this out at all. And I mean, that guy, Paul Kengor, right? He's a Marx scholar. So he's an authoritative source on Marx. And I suggest anybody, if you have time, the Communist Manifesto is a 49-page, 50-page book. Read it. It's very short, and it gives you a direct insight into Marx's mind. But Marx also wrote a play called Ulanem, which is like a Satan. Yeah, it's like a satanic play. Like, what? And like you had said, his favorite characters resembled Satan. It's funny that Saul Alinsky, is the quote you read from Rules for Radicals. This is the same guy who influenced many politicians, Obama, the Clintons,
Hillary Clinton.
yes, particularly Hillary Clinton, Cesar Chavez. Like this guy, he was very influential in the 60s. I think maybe the 50s, 60s, 70s. I don't know about 80s. Probably the 80s too. Like Saul Alinsky was very, very influential. And not to get super political in this stream here, but this is a direct connection. So the reason we want to mention this is he's going to try to continue to point this towards this being an effect of corrupt Christians, right? And we're gonna go into the video some more here, but this has to be mentioned. I mean, this is a direct connection to Satanism. That quote from Saul Alinsky is just extremely transparent as to what's actually happened in the mind of the Marxist.
Well, then just Drew's own comments about Satan actually being someone who's just trying to be liberated from tyranny.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man, you sound just like what Saul Alinsky said.
Right.
And what was Marx trying to do the whole time? Just bring liberation from tyranny, but in a way that did not involve Christ. Right. And this may be another video, but I mean, historically, I mean, we have the American Revolution and the French Revolution. And the French Revolution tried to have liberation from tyranny, but also by sacrificing the church, and renaming the Cathedral of Notre Dame as, I think, Our Lady of Reason, or no, the Temple of the Goddess of Reason. That's what they renamed it, right? And then they
the Jacobins did
killed.
That.
Yes, the Jacobins. Yes, with what is his name? Maximilian Robespierre, and they killed a lot of the clergy, and that was a bloodbath. That was the reign of terror. It was horrifying. But then when you have another revolution in America where they keep the Bible at the center of things, right? And they're able to get away from the tyranny of England, the world power at the time. They don't have a reign of terror afterwards. They don't have a horrifying, corrupt state afterwards that then has other revolutions that have no. They have stability afterwards, and that might be a reason for that. All the founders, some 53 out of the 55 were all committed Christian, or 51, I think, out of the 55 committed Christians, and they. A lot of them fund these Bible societies. England didn't allow them to just print their own Bibles, but the second day of independence, not only do the northern colonies outlaw slavery, they also start printing Bibles all over the place. And then we have a stable state. There may be a reason for that.
Well, it's anyway. Again, very interesting the connections there. But let's keep playing the video here.
Yes.
In August 2017, Pastor Joel Osteen's megachurch, Lakewood, opens its doors to victims of Hurricane Harvey. Only after thousands of people openly criticize it for failing to do so when the people of Houston needed it most.
I remember
the church has tried to do better since, but it's clear to many that reducing bad PR has motivated this change more than any Christian commitment to charity. Lakewood's stadium-sized auditorium was meant as a stage for a pastor with a net worth of $50 million, and to a lesser extent, as an opulent venue in which attendees could be perceived as a part of its grandeur. In the same year, Hillsong Church pastor Carl Lentz began publicly appearing alongside Justin Bieber, the Kardashians, and several other A-listers, usually wearing designer clothes worth tens of thousands of dollars. He was there to provide spiritual guidance, he claimed.
That picture.
His celebrity massively grew Hillsong's popularity, So they were happy to funnel a small fraction of their tens of millions in annual profits and donations into his lifestyle. Eventually, in 2020, Karl's multiple extramarital affairs and emotional abuse of his congregants was uncovered, and Hillsong fired him. Still, they pushed to mingle with celebrities.
So he pretty much just continues to go on, basically abuses within the church have pushed people away from Christianity. And I'm not going to deny that. That's definitely true. Now, what's interesting, he, as somebody who I think would consider himself an intellectual, he should know that that's a bad reason to leave Christianity. Oh, well, my church was bad, so Christianity's false.
Right.
That's not,
and it's not just
to leave
so
the church.
Christianity is false. It's not just stopping there. It's then going, you know what? I think I'm going to join Satanism, or
Right.
I'm going to go the other way. And maybe it's not even full-fledged, goat sacrifices, but maybe it's, I don't know if they actually do that in Satanism, but maybe it's just that kind of atheism that you mentioned earlier, where you're making fun of Christianity. Even so, that would be quite a step to go from belief to all the way to that, just from something that Joel Osteen did. I'll admit, Joel Osteen has caused some problems, and he doesn't make Christianity look that great. I will admit that.
Yeah, sorry, I'm changing over my keyboard here. My Bluetooth's being weird.
I understand. No worries.
But yeah, that's Joel Osteen, and we've talked about these types of pastors before. Who's that other guy?
Carl Lentz with Hillsong.
Well, he was another problem. But there were others too. There are others too. What's that guy's name? The hair grow guy. What's his name?
Oh yeah,
Kenneth Copeland. Copeland.
Yeah,
he's worth like $300 million. That dude is.
Really?
Oh yeah.
More?
Oh yeah. More because he's older. He's been doing it longer. But yeah, no. There's Creflo Dollar. Was that his name? Creflo Dollar, something like that.
That's one of them. That's one of them.
TD Jakes.
The
guy not too far from me. One of his locations, rather. Stephen. What's his last name?
Oh yeah. Oh.
You know what I'm talking about.
What is that church? Yeah.
Elevation
Church. Yes.
It's gonna bug me now.
By
the way, that was King Louis who didn't bathe earlier. We were talking about Stephen Furtick. That's his name.
Yeah,
that's his name. Stephen Furtick.
Stephen Furtick. Right. And then there's Benny Hinn. And
Benny Hinn. Yes.
Recently, we had another scandal with a pastor who was caught in some extramarital affair. And that was, name just escaped me. Lawson. Steve
Lawson.
Steve Lawson. Yep. Just that. And his is interesting. That's part of the Reformed church tradition. He's not just going to get a slap on the wrist. He's probably not going to be able to be a pastor ever again. Right. But still, I mean, there are people in the church who will do things like that. That is a problem. But of course, none of this stuff is commended in the New Testament. This goes directly against the core of Christianity. Now, when people do use this as a reason to leave a church, they may make an emotional reason like that, and it might happen, but that doesn't mean it's a good reason to leave a church or to leave the church of Christ.
The church. Well, and I think a lot of people confuse the fact that the church is not a building. The church is the body of Christ, the followers of Christ. Yes. So that one person, yes, everyone is going to fall at some point, and they need to get back up. Some people are going to fall really hard, like the people we've been talking about, and may not be able to get back up. Maybe they never actually fell in the first place. They were just never standing with us. They just did because of money. But that this, again, to say that this is pushing people towards Satanism more so than what we had just talked about, I don't know about that. I don't know about that. But let's look at this second thing he brings up: inverting Christ.
From peace and justice to violence. The Catholic Church has seen so many abuse scandals in the last few decades that the image of priests as inherently predatory has permeated our culture. Since 1950, underage sexual abuse victims are estimated in the tens of thousands in Ireland and the hundreds of thousands in France. The Church bears responsibility for the deaths of thousands of Indigenous children and the abuse of tens of thousands more in 20th century Canadian residential schools.
So just to bring this up, I don't have. We do have some information if you read the book, Priests or Pedophilia and Priests. Is it Pedophiles and Priests?
Yeah,
Philip Jenkins.
Philip Jenkins.
He goes over a lot of this data. A lot of the reason we have this stereotype is because of the media. It's just completely hyped the way that this has happened in the Catholic Church. Don't get me wrong. It's actually happened more so in the Protestant Church in the U.S. I think Drew mentions that too.
Yeah.
However, it happens far more in other public institutions, but it's just not covered in the media like it is at a church. What's going to be a bigger story? A church, like a church supposed to be like the epitome of moral behavior, is doing something like this, or some public institution, some government institution, which the government certainly doesn't want you to know about. They want to cover that up that way as soon as possible. Think like, for example, the government has a certain fund for vaccine injuries. The government doesn't want news to come out that people were injured from vaccines that they approved. And so they want to, they have a fund specifically to pay people off in arbitration without going public with information. So the Catholic Church doesn't have this, nor should they. It should be public when something like that happens. Same with the Protestant. Any church, they should be exposed for what happened to those people, so that way it's less likely that it'll happen again. But to act as if this is a bigger problem in the church than other places, the data, like from what Philip Jenkins presents in that book, and then a couple of other studies that are corroborated with it, that's just not the case. It's not. This is not the overwhelming where we see these types of things. The reason we have this view is because of the media.
Yeah, right.
It's propaganda.
Right. And instead, what we have, like you were saying earlier, is in secular public institutions, like public schools, we have a lot of many more cases, over 10 times as many cases of pedophilia coming out of those. You know,
right?
Yeah, and then I mean, I will admit, with the Catholic Church, there were instances where the church itself hid these cases from the public, and so there is blood on those priests or bishops or even maybe popes who are involved in that. You know, I'm not really educated on it, but I know it's happened. But again, like, to compare the numbers, you know, man, that's happened so much in public school. Do we have people just en masse like avoiding public schools? Well, nowadays we do have a lot of people.
Well, there's no ongoing joke and stereotype of that happening in public school.
Right.
So,
and then, we just don't have that. Yeah.
All right, let's keep going.
Even
now,
as
wait,
recently
I do want to
as
say
2018.
this instance he's talking about this thing in Canada, I have never heard of that. I gotta admit, I don't know what he's talking about here. Maybe there's something. I gotta go look into that.
I've heard about this before, but I mean, I can't say that I'm shocked that humans did something horrible, even if they're in the church.
And you know, we have to be careful. You know, every time something bad happens in the church, you know, we might have the tendency to say, "Oh well, you know, humans are evil, and that might happen." You know, and then and we'll look at the rest of the world. You know, like we do have to be careful. You know, and say, yeah, those people did do bad things. Some people did do bad things. It's just not a good, even if they did do bad things, it's not technically a good reason to leave the church. Number one. Number two, evidence supports that, you know, maybe people have joined Satanism for a different reason. You know, I guess that's really what we're getting at.
Yeah.
18, the Diocese of Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, was exposed for systematically covering up the abuse of over 1,000 victims. In 2022, the largest Protestant denomination in the U.S., the Southern Baptist Convention, was found to have victims of its own. An independent investigation found abuse had taken place at multiple churches, with perpetrators ranging from low-level volunteers to the former president of the SBC himself.
Yep.
Much of this
and
abuse
the
had been
SBC did that
mishandled, according to the
investigation
report,
themselves.
as
They did
victims
a lot of investigating. I was actually there at the annual meeting when they decided to make a committee to investigate that. You know,
Good
so,
on them.
yeah.
No, they need
Yeah,
to.
yeah. At least they're investigating it. That's good. It was a small amount of cases where that happened, but there were some allegations that had to be looked into. And some of it was true. So.
Yeah.
rarely saw their abusers face consequences for their actions. The SBC has seen an unprecedented decline in membership in the past few years, and with this abuse finally coming to light, it's doubtful their numbers or reputation will be restored anytime soon.
So, yes, this information has affected the attendance to SBC, but that is not the only issue. The Southern Baptist Conference has had so many theological battles in the last 10, 20 years over women pastors, same-sex marriage type things. There has been many theological issues, even like really minute one, or not minute, but really just straight up Christian, but not social based, like salvific type issues. That there's a lot of reasons why it's declined, and a lot of churches have pulled away from the Southern Baptist Convention. You have a lot of what do you call them, non-denominational churches now. Some of them will still donate to certain, like Southern Baptist Convention or the United Methodist. And United Methodist, the reason that's declined, which is on this chart here, well, that's because of their support of same-sex marriage. So that's like their super progressivism that's why their attendance has dropped. So to try to point to make this seem like it's because of these scandals, that's why the Southern Baptist Convention has lost so much attendance and participation. That's a little misleading. There are a lot of reasons.
Yeah. I think you said it perfectly. A lot of other reasons, and a lot of it has to do with the growing trend toward like pluralism in colleges. A lot of youth go to college and then don't go back to church as a result, and a lot of their professors are very much atheists and left-leaning, studies show. And so as a result, a lot of kids go to college and come back atheists and leftists, which is strange.
How interesting.
When two of the largest institutions bearing the name of Christ develop reputations for violence and the suppression of justice, Christ as a symbol suffers. Now, when millions think of Christ, the image of a peaceful, loving Redeemer gives way to that of a man who shows mercy to abusers, but never their victims. A symbol of peace and justice becomes a shield for those perpetuating violence. Wisdom to ignorance.
So I don't think that, even with those circumstances granted, that's a symbol of Christ like harming the victims while protecting the perpetrators. If you read scripture, if you're familiar, particularly with the gospel, since we're talking about Christ or the New Testament as a whole, but let's just mention the gospels for now. We know that person is not immune to punishment or to hell. Like you don't just get this ticket. Oh, I'm good. I got my insurance, my fire insurance. I can do whatever, and I'm immune from hell. No, you are. If you're saved, you're not doing something like that. So either A, you had a serious fall, or B, you weren't saved to begin with. Because I think a lot of people, like the leaders we mentioned earlier, they get involved in the church and it becomes a job rather than doing the ministry for the work for the kingdom. It's for themselves instead of the kingdom. And so, like we're moving in that direction of, well, it's just this image it has now, so everything related to it's bad. That's just crazy. It's a horrible mindset.
Such a broad brush of everything. Yeah, and I mean, Jesus said in the Gospels pretty clearly, anyone who causes one of these little ones to sin, it would be better for him if a millstone were tied around his neck and it were thrown into the sea. Jesus's own words would be on the sides of the victims very
Right.
clearly. But I guess he's saying, you know, what people are looking for is some kind of corporeal action, punishment, not just something, oh, well, it happens in the next life. And I mean, I can empathize emotionally with people who struggle with people like this. But then what the answer is, the rest of the church is not like that. Why don't you go to a different church and try to meet new people? And in fact, if I knew that person, I would take them, you know, alongside, and I would try to take them to churches. I would be friends with them. I mean, that's what we're commanded to do as Christians. We could then
Right.
disciple that person, and then they'll see Christ in you and be encouraged, which would be very good, especially for their spiritual health. You know, to stop going to church would actually be to remove the healing agency from your life. You know,
Right.
yeah. Except if that church is really that bad and that dark, then change churches. Yes.
All right. Well, let's keep
Yeah.
going.
And deception. White evangelicals, one of, if not the most powerful religious group in the US, overwhelmingly supported the presidency of Donald Trump, with many powerful evangelical leaders calling him God's chosen leader or savior of America. His words on non-religious issues then took on a near divine status to them. If he
I mean, he's kind of inflating it a little, but he got a lot of support from evangelicals. He certainly did.
For some of them, yeah. But I don't think that like divine support, like that's going to be a fringe minority of evangelicals that would say something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, yeah.
Vaccines
I mean, some people. Oh, go ahead. No, actually, go ahead and keep playing. This is good.
Okay.
linked to autism, that became the evangelical position. When he simultaneously cried conspiracy and embraced pseudoscientific treatments for COVID, evangelicals followed. When he lost the 2020 election and claimed it was rigged, most evangelicals instantly believed him. Even as a man who has clearly never lived according to
Yeah, this is
What?
clearly. This became very political very, very quickly there.
I know.
I guess it's okay for Hillary to question the election, but it's not okay for Donald to do it. That's weird.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, and to say that most evangelicals, they question the election because Donald Trump said so. There's no way they did their own independent research and found that there were some troublesome factors of the election. Right? We're not going to talk about the 2020 election here, but to just generalize and say there's absolutely no reason to believe that there was something troubling about the 2020 election, it's simply because Donald Trump says so. That's just ridiculous. That's absolutely ridiculous. I mean, and you couldn't even talk about it. You probably still can't, but you couldn't even mention the word election or something in that regard for like a year during that time frame. That's really weird.
Yeah.
That's really weird. There were good reasons for people to believe that there were issues with the 2020 election. And there's no denying that there was. So that's like, this is just now getting into some political, like rhetoric. This is not. That's really all this is.
Yeah. And also, I mean, are people really seeing how Donald Trump was with vaccines, with the election and whatnot, and then going, you know what? I'm just so mad at Christians in general. Time to go be a Satanist. That seems quite extreme to me. That just seems extreme. Hold on. We have a couple comments here from Saint Pat. And he says, actually, Satan is the father of the Christian churches. That's quite a statement. You seem to be in that group of people who are agreeing with Drew right here. You would, I guess, have to point out maybe where that makes sense biblically. Maybe are these churches teaching Satanism? That would be something that'd be interesting to hear about. I would be very surprised to hear that.
Well, either way, let's keep hearing what Drew has to say. Hopefully he's going to move out of politics soon. He's not right away, but he will.
Christian principles, Trump became the decade's most influential figure in American Christianity. His deceptions aimed at improving the optics of his presidency spawned new religious movements which embraced misinformation harder than any young earth creationist group in decades past.
Whoa.
Many Americans no
Whoa,
longer
that
occupy
hurts,
a
man.
shared
Hey.
Yeah.
We don't embrace. Hey, listen, I would know if I was being deceived. And we're young earth creationists. We're not being deceived. Are you saying Satan is deceiving me to being a young earth creationist? No,
Apparently.
I'm trolling, but
Yeah. I know.
yeesh, man, he threw us right under the bus. Okay.
Yeah. Apparently, we're just conspiracy theorists because we're young Earth creationists.
Yeah.
That's wild. If you think differently than the consensus, you're a conspiracy theorist.
Yeah.
That's kind of authoritarian. Yeah, a little bit.
It is. It is a little bit. If it moves on to silencing opposition, yes, it has become
Yes.
maybe totalitarian, which is the next step. Yeah.
Interesting. Kind of like communist regimes. But anyways, I guess we can answer this question from Vicky. Off topic, but when a Muslim argues Muhammad is in the Bible, just tell them those passages are about me. Allah gave me the real Quran because it got corrupted by Uthman. Trust me on this. Okay. I'll remember that, Vicky. I'll remember that. And I'll have to try that out.
I've heard that. Phil has said things like that before too, because it's like,
Yeah.
oh no, does God logic do that? He might be doing that. I feel like I've seen this.
Probably
because that did happen, in Islamic history. Okay, guys, well, this is not the real Quran. We're going to collect all of them. We're going to burn them, and then we're going to release the new version.
And if I can, just getting back on track here from the Muhammad thing, the Q thing, like the picture of this guy here with the Q hat, I do remember when that happened, the QAnon thing, and that was pretty stupid. There's a lot of really wild stuff. There's a military tribunal going on, and Hillary Clinton's being tried. All right, there was a big thing, but that wasn't. I wouldn't tie that to Christians, so to say. Maybe people who claim to be Christian, but I can't think of any churches that were talking about this. Just because the majority of Christians would call themselves conservatives doesn't mean this was a Christian thing. This was a psyop that was driven by people who were flabbergasted by the 2020 election. They couldn't believe it was so unlikely that Joe Biden, the guy who can struggle, even then, who struggled to string a sentence together coherently, like without just saying strange things, crushed Donald Trump, had the most votes in U.S. history. An incumbent president got more votes than, besides Joe Biden, than anybody in U.S. history. And Joe Biden topped that. He topped Obama. That was just there. That was really strange. That was very unlikely.
He super performed Hillary Clinton, specifically in the cities where it mattered, so Milwaukee, Detroit, Philly, I think, Atlanta.
What are those counties called? Those 16 counties or 18 counties that are, if you win these, you're like guaranteed to win the presidency. I can't remember the name of those. But anyways, everybody went to bed. Trump was ahead in the polls. People thought he was going to win. They woke up. All of a sudden, all these votes came in overnight. These mail-in ballots that all just, if you see like the chart for Michigan and stuff like that, they just boosted Biden like crazy. So that was a perfect opportunity for somebody to come in with this Q crap. Like you have a bunch of devastated people. Let's come in and do this. Like the Russia conspiracy that was going on for 3-some years, that the people on the left held on to that for dear life. We're hoping that this FBI investigation will reveal that Trump colluded with Russia, and that's how he won the election, blah, 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 blah. And we're going to get him out of office. And then, of course, it came out, it was a nothing burger. We wasted $40-some million on a hoax that politicians paid for. So anyways, that the same thing happens. Like this is somebody who takes advantage. I'm sure somebody made a bunch of money off of that. But again, what does this have to do with Satanism? How does this lead people to Satanism? To say that this is one of the reasons why, like, that's just really weird to me. I don't see the connection. I don't even see a correlation, let alone a connection. So that's just
Seems like Drew is using that as a reason to just bring this up and harp on it. But I don't. Yeah, right. I don't see the connection.
And sadly, all of the YouTube atheists have been doing this, except Alex O'Connor. Alex not done that because he is the coolest YouTube atheist. But anyways,
he is cool.
Reality with their own families. Various Christian churches have battled scientific and political progress throughout history, but today, for entirely new reasons, to embrace conspiracy and pseudoscience is to be Christian for many. As a result, many non-Christians see Christianity as, at the very least, a slippery slope to embracing conspiracy and pseudoscience. Christ no longer appears as a symbol of wisdom.
Okay.
Then just be an atheist.
That's not.
Why be a Satanist?
Well, yeah, number one. But number two, that image has been drawn by atheists. They're the ones who've created that. So somebody like we're conspiracy theorists because we're young Earth creationists. We think that the best way to interpret Genesis is how it's written. At least it doesn't have to be 100% literal, but it seems that the other interpretations are the least likely to our point of view from our form of hermeneutics and our theology, right?
Yes.
And we can see we have scientific models for the flood. For you can look at like Russ Humphrey's cosmological model to explain the cooperation with like a similar Big Bang type thing that fit with that. And we've seen scientific models change over and over again. Like we don't see what we used to see with like atomic theory and things like that. Right? These things have changed dramatically in the last 100 years. So it's always possible, and data like that comes out from the James Webb Telescope actually helps the young Earth creationists. We're seeing fully formed galaxies way far away that aren't supposed to be fully formed. That was a prediction Jason Lyle made, a young Earth creationist, and he was right. The secularists, the conventional paradigm scientists were wrong. So there's a win right there. Are now the non-conventional paradigm, the non-young Earth creation? Are you guys conspiracy theorists now because you can't make proper predictions with James Webb? Like, I'm just saying, like it's crazy. To say that somebody's a conspiracy theorist because they differ in opinion. Now, if somebody is saying, you know, like the flat earth people, yes, they're conspiracy theorists to a certain extent because they say that NASA and everybody is lying about the shape of the earth. It's a cover up. What? I don't know. Like they go on wild tangents to explain why. I don't understand why these agencies would be motivated to say the earth is flat. To say the earth is round and when it's really flat. I don't understand that.
Well, that part for a while, I know that the flat earth, like I don't know, Flat Earth Society, I don't know what it's called, but the leading flat earther was an atheist. You know, I mean, so that's not necessarily something that's a part of Christianity. You know,
well, I'm just talking about conspiracy theories, even though there are a lot of Christian flat earthers. But
there are a giant amount.
What I'm trying to say is that you can say that's a conspiracy theory, but the whole notion of being a conspiracy theorist is to be a Christian. That came from atheists. That came from the new atheists like Richard Dawkins and Sam Harris, Christopher Hitchens, Daniel Dennett. That came from them. And then people like Drew, who call Christians, you guys are just conspiracy theorists because you believe you're calling young Earth creation a conspiracy theory. I guarantee you he's done little to no research in modern young Earth creation. Yeah, he probably doesn't even know who Jason Lyle is.
If anyone wants to know a little bit of evidence for like the flood, we have a video on the geological evidence of the flood. I know, you know, maybe a lot of people didn't see it, but hey, you know, if you want to go check, if you want to learn some geology, go ahead and check that out. It's 20 minutes long.
Right. But it's ironic. Like that label comes from atheists, but yet he's trying to say Christians brought it upon themselves.
Right.
It's just really weird and it's almost dishonest. But anyways, maybe he doesn't realize what he's doing. So let's see what else he has to say.
Wait, I like what.
But as a tool,
the Earth is actually shaped like a donut. In fact, yeah. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like we know the shape of the Earth. I think that one's a little easier. But anyway.
Of deception or a representation of ignorance. love and mercy to hatred and cruelty. One of the most recognizable Catholics in America today is Matt Walsh. His primary marketing strategy plays on the creation of outrage. Every title, every thumbnail, every story covered, all crafted to anger or panic the viewer over the supposedly deliberate, malicious evils of all those outside his camp. He regularly reacts to TikToks from liberal or queer teenagers, responding primarily with insults and cruel mockery. On multiple occasions, he's
pardon me, isn't this video primarily going over bad things Christians have done, you know, those who are not in Drew's camp, and then trying to show like, well, that's the alarm, this is why there's this rise in Satanism, is because of those bad Christians? Seems like this is kind of the pot calling the kettle black.
Yeah, it's you hit the nail right on the head. I've made a short, actually, if you look back in our shorts, of calling Drew out, genetically modified skeptic, for making a video. It's part of a long video. It's a snippet from a long video he has, but it's a short, and it's talking about religious apologists. They don't do research. They don't know anything about how atheists think. They've never been atheists themselves, blah, blah, blah. And he shows a picture of J. Warner Wallace in that video.
Right.
Dude was an atheist for 35 years and converted to Christianity through cold case detective research, because he's a cold case detective.
Yeah. Longer than Drew has been alive.
Yeah. Or at least as long as he's been alive. Like, dude, practice what you preach, man. You're
yeah.
I don't think you're saying, he says apologists don't do research. And then he goes on to say that Christian universities are just biased, and you don't actually learn to find truth. You learn to confirm your bias. Yeah, because there's no bias in secular schools, Marxism, but anything.
You were right. I mean, the geologists, you know, that I cite in my flood video, and even more than that, that, oh man, there's more bias, they would argue, in scientific communities, who actually get paid based on that bias. Anyway, you know, different video, but there's a lot of bias in the scientific community. To say that there's not would be neglecting truth.
Right. I mean, there's a whole methodology that is methodological naturalism, you know, which is okay for finding scientific truth. That's fine to a certain extent, but to reject all possibility of anything theistic or supernatural, that is not okay. Especially like when we're doing historical science and we're doing research through history, like Bart Ehrman will say, oh, well, history just doesn't tell us about miracles. We can't say that miracles are true through history. So even though the firsthand accounts, you know, the best thing we look for from historical evidence, eyewitness testimony, we have that, the Gospels, but that all the miracle claims, they can't be taken to be true because of history, because history can't prove miracles or give evidence for miracles.
Right. What is that? What is that? That's a methodological problem.
Yes.
That is a priori. We're going to have some philosophical a priori objection that says history means you cannot consider the supernatural.
Right. And so ultimately it's fallacious reasoning. All you have to ask is why? Oh, because we don't see miracles. That means they don't happen. Yes.
Yeah. Right.
Horrible reasoning. That's horrible reasoning. That's at best an argument from silence. But anyways,
hey, question.
Yeah.
Would it be all right if I do this in the quickest way possible? Just throw it out there quick.
Well, I told him to look at your video, but go ahead.
You did. I love this topic, but well, yeah, you know what? Just look at the video. It would probably take me too long to explain, but I think you can Google this, but the Cambrian explosion is like crazy good evidence for the global flood, because it seems like something catastrophic happened, and then all of these fossils were made very, very quickly. And remember, it's very hard to make fossils with current processes. Floods do it. Great job. And so to have just this layer right on the other side of the great unconformity of just fossils, all of this, you know, animals that would come from about the same level in water depth, like animals from that, you know, water depth, all of them are just fossilized right there really, really quick. And some of them have their stomach contents fossilized as well. Worms with stomach contents there. It had to be super quick how it happened. And then Nothing like that is on the other side of the great unconformity. Anyway, watch my video. That looks like something only a catastrophic event like a global flood could do that. And when they say, oh, there's a big time gap there, sounds to me like a huge rescuing device. But anyway, the video helps. Enough. We can get back to the topic.
All right. But anyways, like you said, Drew is what he's claiming or what he's, attacking Matt Walsh for is exactly what he's doing. So it's ironic. It's ironic.
Yes.
Announced the locations of gender-affirming healthcare programs with only a handful of patients, called the workers their evil, claimed they mutilated thousands of children for money, and called for them to be forced to stop immediately. Then, when some of his fans took it into their own hands to harass and intimidate healthcare workers, either online or in person, forcing them into hiding, Walsh showed no remorse. He does this, he says, in order to usher in God's kingdom on earth. It is not in spite of his love of Christ that he shows hatred and intends to harm his enemies, but because of it. This attitude continues to spread in Christian political culture. Loving one's enemy is seen as weak and contemptible unless love looks like putting a stop to their sin through imprisonment or violence.
Where is he getting this from? Where is the political violence coming from conservatives?
Yeah, I would like to know that.
I'm sorry. I remember like the best he can do is say January 6th. That's the best he could do, as opposed to like all the riots of 2020, the recent assassination attempts against Trump. Like, I'm sorry, this is not coming from Matt Walsh supporters. There may have been people who harassed people trying to do surgery on children, remove their genitals, something like that. If you're going to harass anybody, harass those people. But I mean, like to act like this is a Christian thing. Christians want to do this. If you want to call people standing outside of abortion centers and protesting and trying to offer the mothers going in there a chance to adopt their kids or whatever the case may be, like Jeff Durbin does this. We disagree with him on a lot of theological issues, but this guy goes to abortion centers, tries to talk to the parents going in, and he's adopted kids. He's saved 2 or 3 kids doing that. How?
Yeah, that's amazing.
That's amazing. That's a wonderful thing to do. And these are the types of things that someone like Matt Walsh would encourage, as he's a very outspoken person against abortion. He's Catholic. He's very pro-life. So it just seems really strange that this, again, how is this bringing people to Satanism? I don't know.
Yeah.
But
yeah. I don't see that.
Anyways, we'll keep going. It's almost over here.
Many non-Christians, especially those targeted by these Christians, do not associate Christ with love or mercy. He is, rather, what motivates hatred and cruelty. Inverting Satan.
I haven't seen any cruelty that he's talked about, like telling people. A lot of the times it's a conversation Matt Walsh has with, especially the transgender thing. He's trying to stop people from having kids make permanent life-altering decisions from things that could be temporary situations of their youth.
Yeah. Without parental consent. I mean, right. That is pretty heinous. If you're having people go to these doctors now if you're having them threaten the doctor, that's one thing. You probably shouldn't do that. But to put a lot of pressure on them, there's nothing wrong with that. They're doing something very, very bad.
Yes.
There's nothing wrong with being serious about that.
There's a reason why European countries are stopping these types of surgeries, particularly on children. So,
good.
Yeah.
To so many, Christ now represents the opposite of what he has traditionally. Out of goodness, then, they struggle against those who embody the vices of this inverted Christ. Already representing rebellion against Christ, Satan naturally serves as a symbol for this struggle. Ironically, this positions Satan as a common symbol for people seeking to embody some traditionally Christian values. After all, their struggle is not against a savior, but against the rulers, against the authorities, and if I'm to continue with this reference, against the powers of this dark world and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. I'm not suggesting that Satan has been fully inverted into a Christ figure. Plenty of people like satanic imagery for the aesthetic, and the romantic view of Satan as a champion of the individual's quest for personal pleasure and fulfillment is still in play. But it's no longer the whole story. The political activism associated with the Satanic Temple does focus on the bodily and religious autonomy of the individual, but most within the organization are also politically left, preferring communal solutions to poverty and oppression. Satanic imagery in recent mainstream art has meant to signal independence from traditional religious narratives, but only in the context of belonging to the LGBT community.
Okay, so that's bogus. They always say bodily autonomy. Okay, so you mean the right to kill your unborn children?
Yeah.
Or that's what you're talking about. They always try to sneak. Why don't they just say it with their chest? Abortion. You want to be able to kill unborn children. You don't want to say it because it sounds horrible. That's why they say bodily autonomy or women's health care. But no, that's what you mean.
Yeah.
That's what the Satanists do. And there's, so I'm going to pull this up now. Samuel Alito's, this was a thing. You remember that? The Samuel Alito's mom's healthcare abortion clinic from the Satanists. Let me see here.
Samuel Alito, the judge, the SCOTUS
right.
judge?
This was this was a mockery of Samuel Alito. Mom abortion clinic, and they were offering satanic abortion rituals. It's the Satanic Temple. Here we go.
Yes.
Yeah. I made a video on this, and it was super shadow banned. Let's see here. All right. So here's the website. All right, let me hide this first. There we go. Here's the website. See? Are you interested in learning more about the Satanic Temple? Samuel Alito's mom's satanic abortion clinic. Oh my goodness! If only abortion was legal when I was pregnant, Samuel Alito's mom. This is despicable. What's wrong with you guys?
Despicable. Wow.
You guys are despicable. And they're like, "Oh, this is just a joke. It's just a joke." I mean, what's next? You gonna joke about slitting toddlers' throats? Like, why not take it as far as you can? So there's well, Peter Singer at least tries to do things like ethically. I don't think he would be cool with this. There is this one portion, there was this one section that showed how to go through the abortion ritual. I'll just have to pull up our YouTube, and
I do remember seeing it.
Yeah.
I can't believe they say Samuel Alito's mom's satanic clinic. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. No, it's despicable. And then so in Cosmopolitan magazine covered that. That's right. That's what happened.
Yes.
They did a whole article on it here. I'll play the video that I have. Let's see here. It's
show
unbelievable.
our content in our content.
Yeah. Right. Well, I don't feel like trying to find that Cosmopolitan. This is just a much faster way to get it across to everybody. And I'm going to play the one that we did on that I did on TikTok because it's a little bit longer. TikTok lets you do a little bit longer as opposed to YouTube. If it's a short, it's got to be 1 minute exactly. TikTok, it can be this way however long you need it.
And one of the largest women's magazines in the world, published in over 35 different languages and in over 100 different countries globally,
recently hear it?
Made a post on their Instagram that promotes satanic abortion ritual ceremonies. So how does a satanic abortion ceremony even work? Patients of all faiths are welcome at Samuel Alito's mom's satanic
this is
abortion
real
clinic in New Mexico.
Yeah.
Along with medical counsel, the Satanic Temple offers free ceremonial support to everyone. Abortion ceremonies are totally optional and customizable. Here's a simple one the Satanic Temple recommends. In fact, here's a picture of the website. This is where you can get your medication registered for abortion that they give. The first recommendation that they give. First, find a quiet space.
I'm surprised
Bring a
it's still
mirror if
up.
you can.
Like,
Just before taking the
found
medication,
it so
gaze
easily.
at your reflection and focus on your personhood. Home in on your intent, your responsibility to you.
Yeah.
It should really help you as you process the fact that you are killing your child. So this, along with other recommendations, is supposed
So
to
yeah, that it's absurd. Like they're trying to be funny and they're like trolling pro-life pretty much. They're trolling that. But I mean, is that funny? Is this funny?
Right.
So
Right.
this is already a morally significant issue, and to just turn it into a joke, like this doesn't make it better. This just makes it horrible in a different way. So instead of you being like demonic and like intentionally demonic, now you're being, comedically demonic. It's not better.
Yeah.
Now you're just
No, it's worse.
worse in a different manner. Like you think that it's funny to talk about doing a satanic ritual while murdering an innocent baby.
Yeah.
That's despicable. So this whole thing, this facade that Drew's trying to put on, like it's not a big deal. They're just doing what's the term that they used? I can't remember. Was it healthcare or bodily autonomy?
Yeah.
Bodily autonomy. Right. That's what they mean. So let's be real here.
A group extremely concerned with issues of harm, fairness, and social justice. The vices traditionally associated with Satan are driving his rise in popularity today, and this is a reason to panic. We should be concerned that such a massive portion of Christian culture has grown so corrupt that the devil is becoming a symbol of virtue. To those who'd like to see young people put down their pentagrams, realize that Christian culture must first rediscover what it means to pick up your cross. Until and unless Christ ceases to represent greed, corruption, ignorance, violence, and hatred, many will continue to think it better to serve in hell than reign in heaven. Thanks for watching. Now,
okay,
Sheesh,
so that's
I
pretty
mean,
much the end.
Yeah. But I mean, well, we had a real nice example with the floods in Western North Carolina. We had a lot of support from churches when the government may not have helped them very much, but a lot of churches spent a lot of money to go down there and help them, which is beautiful. Yeah.
Yep. And I can tell you, as a resident of North Carolina, that's been a gigantic effort all around. And I'm an hour and a half away from that area. It's a significant distance from me, but so many organizations, churches in particular, and other nonprofits that are funded by churches are going out there, boots on the ground, doing work out of sheer just love and kindness. And this is, a result of Christ.
Amen.
And what he had said there at the end, I do agree. We do have to fix the image of Christ in the U.S. It has been distorted, but it's been distorted through a lot of ways that he didn't mention, like progressive Christianity, which confuses people and shows a different view of Christianity, like a pluralism, kind of like what you said. That's not true Christianity, nor is it love. If you're not telling someone the truth, it's not love. You're just telling them what they want to hear. That's being selfish. That's not being loving. But to fix the image of the church too, like you as an atheist with an 800, or he's probably got close to 1 million subscribers.
Close to 800,000.
755,000 subscribers. You have a lot of influence on that. And your entire channel is about bashing religion and showing how religious people are wrong and manipulative and all these other things. The things he says about people like Frank Turek, William Lane Craig, or other apologists. He went on Sean McDowell's channel one time and they had an interview and a discussion with each other. And then a couple videos later, he's making a video bashing Sean McDowell. It's like, dude, you're contributing to the very factor that you're saying Christians need to fix. So why don't you stop bashing Christianity? Because there is this video done by Apologetics Squared that to me was just a death blow to any atheist channel. And he basically presents Pascal's wager in a very clever way. I'll have to link that video in this description. I really like Apologetic Squared's channel. He does some really heavy philosophy, and he does it in a well-explained manner. So in like 5 minutes, you can understand a Bayesian argument. It's awesome. Anyways, in this video, he basically presents Pascal's wager, but to an atheist content creator. And so he says, okay, let's take a look at this. If you're an atheist content creator, you think that Christianity is false. But let's look at this from a probability perspective, right? To be fair, you can't be certain atheism is true, and you can't be certain Christianity is false. So let's give it like a 1 out of 10. 1 out of 10 Christianity is true. 9 out of 10 naturalism or atheism is true. Okay, great. Let's look at the end results of atheism, naturalism. You die, that's it. You, the rich person, the ravenous murderer, all die. You have the same outcome. Worm food. No difference. Christianity is true. You, a believer, the ravenous murderer, rich person, die. You do not have the same outcome. The believer goes to heaven. Right? So the like possibility could be an infinite paradise or an infinite torment if Christianity is true. So if the outcome is the same no matter what, if naturalism is true, but on Christianity it's not, then you actually have, from a very low probability perspective, a moral duty to stop producing atheist and naturalist content, because you could potentially be damning someone to eternity in torment because you're convincing them to leave Christianity. Whereas the other way around, there is no difference in the end game.
Right.
It doesn't matter.
There's no benefit. You're not
right.
helping people by bringing them to atheism.
Correct. So from a moral perspective, the most morally superior or the most morally permissible position would be to stop producing anti-Christian or atheistic naturalistic content, because that's the only way you can guarantee you are not influencing the minute possibility of somebody spending eternity in torment.
Yeah. Now, what they have to do is kind of what Aaron Ra does and say, no, it actually hurts society more for people to be Christians. It actually hurts.
Sociological studies don't support that, so that's
right.
Not true.
And who hits that really well is IP with the studies in religiosity, intrinsic religiosity. Yeah. It produces more happiness in life generally.
Less crime, more the family support,
intact, and so the kids are raised in that kind of environment. It's better. And then monogamous marriage, though, that is something that we find within Christianity, Judeo-Christian worldview, and is not present in any other religion. That it's not emphasized as it is in Christianity. That kind of thing is even practiced by a lot of people who don't believe the Bible because it works. I was actually just reading a book about that recently on getting married helps you have a happier, wealthier life. It just does. And staying married to the same person. The studies just show it, which is why even people on the far left who don't believe in Christianity, there are some who still have traditional kind of Christian monogamous marriages going on. It does help you. It's good for practical living. So just to add to your argument, atheists don't really have a moral obligation to then propagate atheism in some way.
Right. No, definitely. And just, I took some screenshots from, for anybody who's interested in the religiosity piece, I did take some screenshots here, I'll share my screen real quick. Of the different studies that IP goes over, Inspiring Philosophy. We don't agree with everything that he promotes from a theological standpoint, but he does go over a lot of great stuff, and he's a great advocate for Christianity. So this study that was done, it shows that is crime and religion, assessing the role of faith, of the faith factor. It was done by Byron Johnson, and Soon Jung, I think is the next person. And they're both sociologists. Approximately 90% of the studies, 244 out of 270, find an inverse or beneficial relationship between religion and some measures of crime or delinquency. Only 9% of the studies, 24 of 270, found no association or reported mixed findings, whereas only 2 of the studies found that religion was positively associated with a harmful outcome. And what's funny, you mentioned R and Raw. Tom Jump, he's an atheist. He debated R and Raw on this topic. Is religion helpful for society or harmful? R and Raw took the negative. T-Jump, an atheist, took the positive. And he debated him, saying, no, studies don't show that, man. So that's kind of interesting.
Wow.
Another one, this is a really popular one. If you love me, keep my commandments, a meta-analysis of the effect of religion on crime. And make sure when you look up this kind of data, you look at... it's better to have like a meta-analysis, like one that's going to look at multiple data points rather than just like a binary one that just looks at 2 data points. And that kind of can get like, that's kind of correlation equals causation fallacy type stuff. Whereas when you have one like a multi-analysis of some sort, that's a better study to look at. Like the one beforehand looked at 270 studies. Like that's good data to look at. We examined the data from 60 studies in this one, right? And found, like I said, it's a meta-analysis. And we found that the religion had a statistically significant, moderately sized effect on crime. About I guess I can't remember.
Value of negative
yes
12, is that?
Yes.
Negative 0.12. It's hard to read.
I think it's negative 12. Finding gives confidence that religion does indeed have some deterrent effect. And you can go through Colin Bayer, Bradley Wright. That's the study there. And then these are other studies that you can go through if you guys want to check these out real quick, or when you get a chance, that go through the effects of intrinsic religiosity. And then there's ones that have a different view of different types of religions, right? And some like these studies here, and there's other ones. This book in particular, The Sacred and the Secular. Funny enough, Genetically Modified Skeptic Drew does a review on this book. He mentions this book in one of his videos, and I think he mentions this quote too. And it goes. What's really funny, this quote here: the greater social protection, longevity, and health found in wealthy post-industrial societies and welfare states mean that fewer people in these societies regard traditional spiritual values as vital to their lives or to the lives of their community. And what does this remind us of? Right? The parable from Christ. Now, interesting. Kind of like what Christ says. It's easier to enter... for a camel to enter the eye of a needle than a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven, right? That's why you have a lot more intrinsic religiosity or religious values in more poorer areas, people that are closer to God. So it's kind of interesting. But anyways, I just wanted to show that data real quick. But overall, we're almost at the 2-hour point, so we did want to end the stream here soon. Ultimately, it seems pretty obvious that his connection with what he presented, with how Christians have acted, the political stuff, doesn't really show a good explanation as to why this growth in Satanism has come up. Maybe there's a little bit of connection there and a little bit of causation that's part of this growth. But I think that the Marxism explanation is a far more impactful explanation. Marxism has heavily influenced all of our education. It's colleges, public schools. It's permeated with Marxism.
Yeah. And when you see the effect that Marxism has on a society, it's pretty scary. It's kind of scary to see that we seem to be going down that path.
Right. Well, we have to pray and hope that for those of us who are believers, you have to love the Lord your God with all your heart, your soul, and your mind. And so when I say mind, you must train your mind so you're capable of withstanding challenge and presenting yourself as a soldier of Christ in the proper manner. One thing, maybe Matt Walsh is disrespectful to some people. Maybe that's the case. I'm sure he is. I don't watch enough of him to really know, but I'm sure he is. He can seem like a smart aleck sometimes, but that's why we follow him.
Yes.
First Peter 3:15.
Yes.
And be prepared to share the reason for the hope that you have. Do so with gentleness and respect.
Amen. Amen. Gentleness and respect.
Alrighty. Well, anything that you wanted to share before we close out, Brent?
That's good. That's a lot. We've shared a lot. So yeah. Man, you must have had those pictures of the intrinsic religiosity studies just ready.
I did.
I was impressed.
I've used them in debates before, so yeah, I have them ready.
Okay.
Anyways. Alrighty. Well, thank you everybody for tuning in to Truth Over Tea, and we'll see you next time. Have a great weekend.
Have a great night.